Ladies and gents, welcome back. It's Monday, and it is, of course, time for an alternative paper review. First up to the Telegraph today, Starmer's defense strategy is in disarray. So, yeah, today is Bash Labour on Defence Day, which is it's quite fun. You know, it's like every other week there's a different piece of the policy and government portfolio. This week it's health. Next week it'll be social care. This week it's bashing the Labour government on their defence policy and plans. But in terms of, you know, debate and recourse, attacking Labour for letting the armed forces down against a backdrop of Tory austerity is pretty funny.
Now, some of the Army's most historic units will be scrapped and others merged as the Defence Secretary looks to cut troop numbers by 20,000. Now, almost 4,500 soldiers have been told they'll lose their jobs, the biggest cut since the election.
Like, it's so easy. It's like shooting fish in a barrel with a BAE manufactured laser-guided drone bomb. Because we all remember those 14 years of Tory cuts, don't we? Slashing the armed forces to threadbare levels not seen since the Napoleonic Wars, leaving us wide open, leaving us hugely vulnerable to geopolitical instability, to attack. I guess it was patriotism with a twist. So we all remember that, even if the dementia-ravaged newsrooms of the Mail and the Telegraph struggle. So yeah, pretty easy to immediately neuter that criticism. But anyway, let's talk about what their beef actually is today. So the Telegraph and the Mail, they're having a good old anger wank today because Labour's Defence Secretary, it's a guy called John Healey, he committed to raising defence spend to 2.5% of GDP this Parliament. And then he went further. He said that he had no doubt that we would reach 3% of GDP by the end of the next Parliament, which is 2034. So 2.5% in 4 years, and then up to 3% of GDP by the end of next Parliament, right? Then yesterday, on the Sunday morning breakfast sofas, he's prodded and probed about this again, and he says he has no doubt that Labour will hit that ambition. Now, there's two ways that you can look at this. First is the Mail and the Telegraphs, which is, hang on a minute, this is supposed to be a spending review where you set out your commitments, your promises, your targets. And 1 minute you're talking about 2.5%, and then 3%, and then the next minute it's like, oh, I personally have no doubt, but it's only an ambition. Like, it's watery, is what they're saying. It's a bit ambiguous. So you could look at it like that, or you could look at it like I would, which is, we're not even halfway through the first Parliament yet. So how could you possibly know what we're likely to spend on defence in 4.5 years' time, let alone 8 years' time? Like, whatever he says, whatever the commitment or hope or ambition is, it's always going to be ambiguous and watery because, frankly, brutally, it depends how many cuts they implement to pay for it. Like, that's always the irony for me on this sort of stuff, by the way, is you can absolutely guarantee that somewhere out there right now is an old, disabled guy in his NHS wheelchair with his expensive medication and his shattered spinal cord, and he'll be reading the Telegraph, cheering on us spending another £25 billion on drones and tanks. Even if you explain to him that the way that we're going to pay for it is by taking away his pills and his chair. And he'll be twitching there on the side of the road, his body temperature plummeting. Well, I'm just happy that the government is keeping me safe. Quickly to the Sun today for an inspiring career move by former Prime Minister Liz Truss. Liz Truss flogging whiskey for ex-con in Scunthorpe. Like, I saw this earlier. I was like, this has to be something to do with, like, a trade deal that she agreed when she was Prime Minister or Foreign Secretary. Pork markets, cheese, whiskey. Like, it'll be some international whiskey manufacturer trade deal type thing. But no, this is actually, it is legitimately Liz Truss in what looks like iPhone filmed footage helping a former GBH convict to sell his whiskey. Well, she's taken time out from conspiracy theorist podcasts to essentially do an infomercial to sell the booze that's probably a huge contributing factor into getting people's brains in a state where they might believe those conspiracy theories. Like, that's what is happening here. Liz Truss flogging whiskey for ex-con in Scunthorpe. Well, doesn't anybody have any fucking dignity anymore? This is like Giuliani selling those slippers, isn't it? This is a Katie Price impersonator switching the Christmas lights on in Slough. I mean, apart from anything else, couldn't this guy get a better personality, like a better fit for this marketing campaign? Because I don't want to be mean about it, but I would have thought that, the visage of Liz Truss would be more of a warning for people to stay away from alcohol.
Prince Andrew's a nonce burger.
Finally, to the Express. And it wouldn't be a paper review without the Express banging on about boats, would it? Boats are arriving like taxis as the migrant numbers surge. They grunt as they ejac their xenophobia and fear all across the newsstands. And they say 1,194 people arrived via boats on the 31st of May. That's according to the Home Office's own figures. But this is your periodical reminder that if somebody is desperate enough to get in a dinghy to cross the channel, then whatever they're running from is probably more deadly than that. And that if you shut processing centres and visa schemes, then people will unfortunately go the black market route. Same thing with drugs. Same thing with everything. You know, when you criminalise these things, you invariably drive them into a more dangerous black market paradigm. And that's why I always say, I think we need to legalise murder, guys. You know, because I've said it before and I will say it again. By keeping murder illegal, you only drive the people doing it into the hands of criminals. But anyway, sorry, seriously. Consequently, as people are desperate enough to jump in a boat, they are found to the tune of around 95% to be legitimate refugees. You know, almost 95% of them. People? But no, don't expect any of that context in here, where the Express seek only to rev up the hate motors of cabbies and care homes. We've got to tear up the agreement. Civil unrest is inevitable. Didn't you lot already try that? This invasion is now a national emergency. Is it though? Like, all of these Express readers and contributors and commenters, like, these people are so fucking... do you remember all the segments on news shows back in the day about gangster rap or UK garage? You guys remember that? And how listening to it made you violent. Like, I remember reading a piece by a guy in The Sun, and he was saying how, like, for research purposes, he had listened to hip-hop. He'd listened to rap for, like, 3 hours straight, and it made him feel violent. Like, it made him want to go out and hurt somebody, he said. I was like, I've literally never had that. I've never heard of that happening before, and I listen to this stuff all the time. I'd never want to go out and physically hurt somebody. But you work for Rupert Murdoch. You work for The Sun. So are you sure you don't just want to go out and hurt somebody? Anyway, and this just happened to be the music that you were playing that morning. But anyway, yeah, like that sort of, you know, that music psychology, snake charm effect. I swear to God, right, Express readers, Express writers have just been listening to the Dam Busters and Rule Britannia on repeat for 17 hours straight. And it's got them a little bit too G'd up, hasn't it? Then somebody asks them what they think about immigration and asylum, and they just clear their throats, don't they? Like, this is my time to shine. Now, let me break this down for you super simple, super clearly, okay? These people who come across in these boats are desperate. And being the beacon of freedom and liberal democracy on the world stage that you lot are all so proud of, unfortunately, that means that occasionally you might actually have to help somebody. Furthermore, we actually need immigration, and yes, a very small part of that is asylum. Papers like the Daily Express, the Mail and the Telegraph are mouthpieces for the Tories and to a growing extent Reform, who are themselves Tories. They're just Tories untempered, Conservatives unconstrained. Tories who, for whatever reason, came undone. People like Lee Anderson and Andrea Jenkins, and now they exist in a permanent state of fear, xenophobia, point scoring and politainment. But none of the Tories or Reform or the Mail, the Telegraph, the Express, none of them have any actual solutions to the problems that we are all facing, i.e. the housing crisis, the cost of living crisis, the care homes crisis, the crunch on energy, the cost of childcare, the declining birth rate. In fact, in lieu of there being many new babies being born, the shrinking working population against the backdrop of an ageing population like the Express's readership, who will all need care of some description, which costs more and more money. Well, in lieu of new babies or high immigration, that care, their care, will end up being cut. Whether that's to pay for the £65 billion of unfunded tax cuts that people like Richard Tice and Nigel Farage are going to market with, or to spend £25 billion on those new tanks. So yeah, like whenever I read comments like that or headlines like this or hysteria about high immigration or boats or asylum, I always feel like I just want to sit the people down and go like, okay, cool. So what is your solution to our problems? How are you going to afford babies? How are you going to afford care homes? Because honestly, there are few solutions out there. You know, this is probably why Liz Truss is diversifying her commercial portfolio. Is to prepay for her care home. Right, that's it, guys. I gotta go. See you all tomorrow.
Just another video.